Welcome to Driving Alpha, where we feature our friends, the outperforming investors who demonstrate their path to driving alpha or outsized investment returns. We're Alpha Partners, where we partner with 1,000 early-stage venture firms as their opportunity capital to invest in their best companies. Driving Alpha is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity knows. Learn more at affinity.co/driving alpha.
Hi, I'm Steve Brotman, the managing partner of Alpha Partners. Welcome to today's episode of Driving Alpha, where we dive deep into the minds of VCs and investors shaping our future. Today, we're thrilled to have with us a true titan of the venture capital world, Tim Draper. Known for his prescient investments in companies like SpaceX, Tesla, and Coinbase, Tim has consistently been at the forefront of technological innovation. As the founder of Draper Associates, DFJ, and Draper University, he's not just funding the future, he's actively cultivating it. Tim's bold predictions about Bitcoin and his advocacy for decentralization has made him a prominent voice in the cryptocurrency space. Get ready for an enlightening conversation as we explore Tim's insight on emerging technologies, the future of finance, what it takes to build world-changing companies. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, Steve.
So it'd be awesome to hear briefly about how you got into the venture industry, and that would be great.
So it's pretty easy. I was the son of a venture capitalist and the grandson of the first venture capitalist in the Silicon Valley. My grandfather created the Silicon Valley venture capital business, I guess. And my dad was a pioneer, and it wasn't clear cut for me. I was more of an entrepreneur, but I sold apples, I sold oysters, I sold Stanford the game. I created a bunch of different little businesses as I was growing up. And then I took over an SBIC that my dad had created that had some private companies in it that were worth about $2 million. I was able to borrow $6 million from the SBA to get started in venture capital. And I went through some trials and tribulations with that SBIC, but eventually I went from being on their dirt list where I owed them their debt back and they were calling for their loan. And I went and I begged forgiveness and said, hey, hold on just a little while. And then the IPO market came and I had 5 big IPOs. One was Parametric Technology, which paid the SBA back completely, made a great return for my dad and whoever else were investors in that SBIC. Then I had a record and I was able to start raising money as a venture capitalist. I went out and brought in John Fisher, brought in Steve Jurvetson. We built DFJ. It was the top of the heap in 1999, really number one venture capitalist in the world for about 4 years there. And then we got kind of institutional, and I felt like Gulliver with all the strings, the Lilliputians, pulling him down one string at a time. And I realized I was being held back a little bit. And so I spun back out, rebuilt Draper Associates as the venture fund, and since then have created a school, Draper University, a show called Meet the Drapers, now Draper Nation, an opportunity for you to join and get a passport and be a part of something that could end up transforming the way we are governed. And that's where I am today. Been a venture capitalist all my life. Everything I do is really driven to bring more entrepreneurs to the fore. And that has been my life's mission.
When you and I met 25 years ago, you did mention that sort of this idea of the flame, of lighting that flame and passing that torch to as many people as possible. Can you share more about that vision?
Yeah, I had a mission to spread venture capital and entrepreneurship around the world. In fact, I backed you on your first mission as a venture capitalist. I've traveled all over the world. I've tried to spread the pixie dust that I learned about while I was here growing up in the Silicon Valley. And I think it's had an impact. I've seen entrepreneurs everywhere from the remotest places in India to the Thailand to wherever, all parts of Africa. They all know what venture capital is. They know how to become an entrepreneur. And I think that mission has really paid off. So I think it's been good for the world.
Absolutely. Well, you've had some big wins like Baidu and Skype, and not just in the US like Tesla and SpaceX, but it's pretty remarkable when you look back. What is it like if you had to give like a new VC some advice, what would it be?
It probably depends on the person, because there are great VCs that come out of journalism, great VCs that come out of engineering, great VCs that come out of business school, and they all have slightly different ways of looking at the world. And there are VCs that focus on the market size, VCs that focus on the technology, focus on the people. I tend to look at all three, but you can be successful as a venture capitalist in any way you go. I think there are early stage VCs and late stage VCs. The early stage VCs, I highly recommend funding companies that make you a little bit uncomfortable, things that are controversial, things that, if they work, create a world that's way better than the world we've got. Those are some of the things that I would look for early. As a later stage VC, I'd make sure that you really did your diligence, dug way in, figure out whether the customers are really buying or whether you're being sold a bill of goods. And so those are very different ways to run a VC shop. And then diversify, because it's very important to make sure that you're making money for your investors and for yourself and for hopefully for the entrepreneurs too. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you're not too highly correlated with the success of any one of them, because you'll make bad decisions for them. Yeah, as a venture capitalist, you got to keep a clear head and even keel going into the tempest that is entrepreneurship. And by being diversified, you're not personally caught up as much in any one, and you can keep a steady hand when you go through the tempest. I think also for your investors, they have a more stable return if you have a lot of different companies, because they're going to come and either be successful or be failures at very different times, and you're going to want to be able to give them a steadier supply of return. It turns out that's almost impossible to do, but you can smooth the curve by being more diversified. Also, you're going into a business where you lose about half the time, and if you're going to lose half the time, you got to make a lot of money on the big winners, and you've got to be diversified, because you don't want that to be throwing one dart at a board where you're going to hit it half the time.
What do you think when you say diversification? What do you mean? Is it 10 companies, 20 companies, sector, geography?
20 is usually a good rule of thumb for each firm, every fund. We don't go by that, actually. We diversify even farther. We'll invest probably in 60 companies per fund, and it does a couple of things for us. We learn more because we see more, and it smooths out that curve for our investors. I mean, there are probably 20 companies where we really pour it on, but 60 where we're creating an option value.
Meaning when you say pour it on, you'll double down and is there a percentage of the fund that you want to have your winners in, like 5%, 10%?
Yeah, about 5% is where we're comfortable usually.
Right. So when you max out. And then
we max out at 5%, maybe a little bit more. But
I remember years ago, one of your theses was the viral nature of the internet and leveraging that. So one of your early wins was Hotmail. How's that developed over the years? And what do you focus on? Is there more of a thesis today or a multitude? Or
I came up with that viral marketing idea in Hotmail's case, and it spread so fast. And I had no idea it was going to spread that way, to have your customer become your sales force. And it benefited Skype too, for the same kind of reasons. It also has benefited Baidu and a number of our other companies, because anybody who has any kind of communications tool uses viral marketing. But it's also been kind of critical to the success of social media for, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. They would never have succeeded if they hadn't created a viral effect. And so I think that there is something we've done there that allows entrepreneurs to spread their idea, their business, their product, their service to the world. in a very efficient, very quick way by getting the customer to be the sales force. And whether you're selling semiconductor equipment for $1 million or you're selling some internet app, somehow getting your first customer to want to help sell to your second customer, and for those two to then sell to the next 6 customers and have it spread, I think is absolutely fundamental. And I think it can help entrepreneurs in their thinking about how marketing is very much an art form. You make a lot of mistakes, you try a lot of different things, but one of the things you really need to try is something to create that virality or that ability or that getting your customer to sell for you.
So is that different from, say, product-led marketing? All right, I don't know if you're familiar with that concept.
I'm not.
Product that sort of sells itself, like Expensify or...
It's in some ways it's related because Hotmail built it into the product. And if you build marketing into the product, that can really help your business. But if you're just building a product and saying it's the best one out there, why isn't anybody coming? You have not quite done your job. You've got a lot more to do as an entrepreneur. You got to get that first customer, second customer, third customer. You got to get them all to be delighted with your product or service, and then see how they can spread it. And sometimes you do that by building it into the product, and sometimes you do it with a viral marketing approach.
So today you must see tons and tons of companies. Do you have like a process or heuristic? You have a team that's looking for things like virality, or can you share more about how you look at things in that respect? And
we see a lot of companies in a year, and we do a small fraction of those. And the way we look at them is we look until we see something very unique. Then we use AI to figure out what else is out there in that field. And then we use AI to evaluate the team. we use AI for everything. And then we bring them in, meet with them, and then there's some things AI just can't do. And those are the things I do with my team. We read the tea leaves. We understand what people are thinking when we see them.
Is there any particular advice you'd give an entrepreneur who's approaching you?
Just know your service, know your product really cold, know your business. I guess the best thing to do is practice. So, it's usually entrepreneurs get funded with their 20th pitch. And that there's a reason for that. It's not that your idea wasn't good the first time. It's that you've been able to practice relaying your idea and been able to grow and evaluate your idea through other people's eyes 20 times. And suddenly it's a better idea and it's a better business. And during that time that you're trying to pitch venture capitalists, you're also trying to run the business. And by trying to run the business, you're running into customers who are telling you what might be a better idea than what you got. And so I think it's important to have perseverance. And if there's any indication that you're onto something, stick to it and keep trying. And just the approach to talking to venture capitalists should be, I'm doing this. This is my life. If you want to be on board, great. If you don't, that's great too.
So you want entrepreneurs to come to you when they're pitching their 20th time?
Actually, we try to be forgiving. If we know it's their first, we try to be forgiving and try to send them back out there to meet other venture capitalists so that they can get better and then come back to us.
Excellent. Is just going to your website the best way to reach out?
Yeah, you can learn a lot about us if you go to draper.tv.
Okay.
But if you go to draper.vc, that's the website. Or if you got a business plan and you build it out and you have a pitch deck and you maybe have talked to 19 venture capitalists already, you can reach out to me, Tim, at draper.vc.
Cool. So let's switch gears a little bit more. You're mentioning AI earlier in terms of your own process. What's your market perspective over the next several years with this last wave? And are there any other things that are attracting your attention?
Yeah, I think healthcare, there are a lot of interesting things happening in healthcare where people are growing new body parts. They're using CRISPR technology for genetic design. They're using data for diagnostics and data plus computation for therapeutics. Healthcare is going to go through a major shift, and it's about time because the oligopoly of the big pharma have, for the first decade continued to take more money, but at least Americans are living shorter lives. They're failing in their mission, and it's definitely time for people to move to the next state. The next state is probably medicine that is specific to the individual, where you would get something different from what I'd get. And that's the antithesis of what big pharma is. They're one size fits all. So that's going to change. Space and transportation, Elon Musk has broken through two major barriers there and allowed us some amazing opportunities to think creatively about how we transport ourselves and other people and vehicles and value and items around the world and out into outer space, and how we use outer space in different ways, whether we're mining asteroids or sending information quicker or whatever, or people quicker through space. Those fields are wide open, very exciting. Can't wait to see what the next entrepreneur has to say about them. The other is there's been sort of a consolidation around Bitcoin in cryptocurrency. I think smart contracts are going to be huge. They're going to completely transform the legal system, the accounting system. I think the taxing system, how people are taxed. I think smart governments are going to realize that they should start accepting Bitcoin because it keeps perfect records, and then they don't need to hire 85,000 IRS agents. They can just use Bitcoin. And then I think there are going to be some major breakthroughs in where AI is being applied to different industries, just the way the internet was. And it changed all these different industries. AI is going through, and it's starting to change all these different industries. And so we've seen them in scientific academic community with something called consensus. We've seen it in the legal industry, quite a few companies in that field. Anything where you need a lot of information and you need it consolidated around one place, those are the places I think are going to be great for innovating. But of course, the best innovations are always the ones that don't even fit in the boxes.
I remember years ago, you said you want to invest in Star Trek technologies.
Yeah, that was good.
It was
That's funny. My son said Iron Man technologies.
That's crazy, man. So on the biotech side, I mean, do you have like a team of biotech folks, to look at this stuff? Or is it more tech IT applied to pharmaceuticals and similar devices and the like? Or do you?
Well, we're always looking for breakthroughs wherever they come from. We do have people that are experts in all those fields, but we don't label them as such. We're generalists. We operate as generalists.
Not to get too political, but we do have an election coming up. You've expressed some worldviews in the past. How has that changed, like in the current environment? Like, how are you thinking about the world? Are you optimistic, pessimistic, agnostic?
Well, I'm always optimistic about the world. I think people are good and doing good things, and they're trying their best. In this election, I was a big supporter of Nikki Haley because she believes in free markets, and she is very good internationally, and I thought she would be fantastic. I started with her. After that, I was stumped between Trump and Kamala Harris. I ended up backing both of them and getting to know them both in some cursory way. And I found them both to have a good heart. They're in the right place. They're trying their best. They're going after big challenges, and I appreciate them both for what they're doing. I think both understand that our government can be run much more efficiently. Both are looking for ways to make it so that government and industry are more in touch with each other. And I think we'll do well with either one of those. But my beliefs generally are, I believe in the startup having a big impact on society. And whenever a company or an industry gets to be a monopoly or an oligopoly, in the case of governments, they're monopolies. In the case of state governments, they're really not, because they have to compete with each other. In the case of the federal U.S. government, feels a little bit like a monopoly. And monopolies don't change very actively or often, and they don't become efficient. Well, I love startups that can transform those monopolies. I mean, okay, there are oligopolies in pharma, so go after pharma. There are with new data-driven healthcare. Banks are an oligopoly, and they need to be transformed. Go after them with Bitcoin. The car companies needed to be transformed. We went after them with Tesla. The space was completely controlled by NASA, and not making any progress. And we challenge that with SpaceX. We see monopolies and oligopolies as slowing down progress. So we right now look at the federal government, we say that is a monopoly or maybe oligopoly with China and Russia and Europe. And it needs transforming. And so startups are probably the way to do it unless you get somebody who totally goes in there and transforms it. Very great talking with you. Thanks for putting me on your show. You're great.
You bet. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for listening to the Driving Alpha podcast, where we host top investors to demonstrate how they outperform the market. Click subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Driving Alpha is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity knows. Learn more at affinity.co/driving alpha.